All right, let's just jump right in. There is something absolutely massive happening in software development, like right now. We're talking about a huge shift, all driven by a new kind of artificial intelligence that's changing not just how we write code, but maybe even who or what does the writing. And that really brings us to the big, provocative question we're tackling today. You hear it being whispered and sometimes shouted all over the industry. Is the era of the human programmer actually over? So, to get our heads around this, you need to understand this one key idea, the AI liftoff. Now, this isn't about your regular autocomplete suggesting the next line of code. No. This is the moment AI stops being a co-pilot and gets in the driver's seat. It becomes the primary creator, writing, testing, and even deploying entire applications all on its own.
And the engine powering this whole thing? It's a technology called agentic AI. The best way to think about it is, it's not just a tool that follows your instructions. It's more like a project manager that understands a goal and then figures out all the steps to get there by itself. And the real inflection point, the moment everyone points to, was the release of Anthropic's Claude Code back in early 2026. That's when things really kicked into high gear.
And if you're wondering about the scale of this, well, it's just staggering. This isn't some little experiment happening in a lab somewhere. At some of the big tech providers, a whopping 75% of all new code that goes into production is now being generated by AI. Just let that sink in for a second, 3/4 of it. That's not evolution, folks. That's a full-blown revolution.
Okay, so those are the big numbers. But what does this actually look and feel like for a real person, a developer on the ground? Well, to make this real, we're going to look at one programmer's story, a journey from being a total skeptic to an absolute believer. Meet Antares. This is a legendary, old-school programmer, the kind of person who loves the craft of writing clean, perfect code by hand. And he'll be the first to tell you he did not want this to be true. But, as he says right here, you just can't argue with the facts. He saw the writing on the wall and realized that AI was about to change his entire world.
So what was it that so completely changed his mind? Simple. It was pure, undeniable results. He basically threw the AI at his own complex projects, and what he saw was just mind-blowing. In a matter of hours, it was knocking out tasks that he knew from experience would have taken him weeks to do manually.
And just listen to this list. It's incredible. First, it took a complicated library and upgraded it, then built a whole testing framework from scratch. Then it went bug hunting and found these super tricky, timing-related bugs that are a nightmare for human coders. Then, get this, it spat out a 700-line C library in 5 minutes. And the real kicker? It took one of his own complex design documents and replicated weeks of his own work in just 20 minutes. 20!
So after seeing all that, what was his big takeaway? It was pretty blunt, actually. He concluded that for most projects out there, it just doesn't make logical sense anymore to sit there and write all the code yourself. And that story perfectly sets up our next big idea. Because if the pros aren't typing out every line of code, then what exactly are they doing? The fundamental rules of making software are being completely rewritten as we speak. So just look at this contrast. On the left, you've got the old way, right? Meticulous, time-consuming, line-by-line work. But on the right, you have this new world, which some people have started calling vibe coding. Seriously, you just describe the goal, the vibe of what you're trying to build, in plain English, and you let the AI agent go off and generate the entire thing. You can see how this completely flips the script on what a developer does all day. Your job shifts from being the writer to being the auditor, checking the AI's work. You go from being a builder to an architect, thinking about the big picture. And you go from being a coder to a prompter, getting really good at telling the AI exactly what you want. The whole focus shifts away from the how and puts all the emphasis on the what. Now, for anyone who thinks this might take the passion out of programming, Antares has this amazing perspective. He says, think about it. What was that fire that kept you up late at night coding? It wasn't the typing, right? It was the feeling of building something. And with AI, you don't lose that. You just get to build more stuff and better stuff than you ever could before. Okay, so we've seen how it affects the individual. But what happens when this scales up across the entire economy? Well, a tech shift this huge always creates a massive economic shockwave. And that means there are going to be some very clear winners and some losers. Right, because you have to remember, this whole software revolution isn't just happening in the abstract, up in the cloud. It has a real, physical foundation. All these powerful AI agents, they need to run on some serious hardware. and that's creating this incredible surge in demand for specific kinds of computer chips. And you get a perfect explanation of why from Jason Child, the CFO of the chip design company ARM Holdings. He points out that while we've all been focused on GPUs for training AI models, this new agentic AI needs a ton of CPUs to act as the agents doing the actual work.
And you know, the money tells the story. ARM's revenue from data center royalties has more than doubled in just 1 year. You can see that insane growth right here on the chart, and a huge piece of that is being driven by this new hunger for CPUs to power the AI agent boom.
Which brings us to our final and maybe the most important question of all. Once you get past the tech and the money, what does all this mean for us, for people? What are the big, thorny human questions that we all need to start asking, and fast?
Well, when it comes to jobs, you basically hear two completely different stories about the future. The sunny, optimistic view is augmentation. It says companies will hire even more developers because each one will be so productive and they'll just build more cool stuff. But the pessimistic view is replacement. It says companies will just cut costs and do the same amount of work with way fewer people. And the honest truth is, nobody really knows which way it's going to go.
And that's not all. This opens up a whole new can of worms. Like, will all this power end up in the hands of just a couple of giant tech companies? What about open source software? Can it possibly keep up? And maybe the biggest question of all, how on earth do you make sure that millions of lines of AI-generated code are actually safe and secure? So, with all that uncertainty, what are you supposed to do? Let's go back to Antries one last time for some practical advice. And it's pretty simple, really. He just says, look, ignoring this isn't an option. It's not going to help you or your career. The only way forward is to embrace it. Find a way to use these tools to multiply your own impact. And that leaves us with this final, big idea to chew on. For decades, human ambition, creativity, and genius were poured into the craft of writing code. Now that AI is taking over that job, we have to ask ourselves a pretty profound question. What is the new role for human ambition? Thank you for watching. If you got something from this, please like the video and support the channel by clicking on the subscribe button. That really helps us. Thanks again.